Hello everybody, welcome to Nostalgia Goggles. I'm Chris, also known as Retro Gaming Nerd, and I think it's about time that I get a little controversial with my show. So, with that being said, I'm not going to ask a question if a game holds up, because this one didn't. Or at least, I don't think it did. At least, reception-wise, it didn't. So today, instead of asking the question of does it hold up, the question now comes into, is it really that bad? Well, let's ask the question. Is Metroid Other M really that bad? I skipped this game because of all the controversy. I completely skipped it. I didn't want it, and I want to see if that was worth it or not, because I haven't played this game. So, with that being said, let's get into it. The story of Metroid Other M is Samus is receiving a mysterious distress call from an abandoned ship, also known as Another Tuesday for Samus. Upon arriving to the battleship, which is the name of the ship, Samus meets up with a pretty familiar team of Federation soldiers, led by her old CO, Adam, who is also investigating the abandoned ship. What lies inside are bioweapons, specifically militarized Metroid and other Metroid series enemies. But since these are military secrets, there is someone on the ship hunting down the other soldiers and Samus to keep things quiet. So Samus must cooperate with Adam and the squad to survive and uncover the truth of what's going on while exploring Samus's past. I feel like the story within this game is very hit or miss, right? I feel like I could see somebody actually liking the story that this gives, and there's major parts of it that I enjoy. I just feel like it's something that we really didn't ask for, and it's very clear that they're probably not going to do something like this again. But I can't say that the story is just god-awful, which is something that I actually expected. I don't really want to go too deep into it because I believe I do go into my issues with it throughout the episode, but there's just a lot of stuff that happens within the story that just does not work out. So, with that being said, let's move on to the gameplay. Metroid Other M is a Metroid game in a 3D space. The reason why I bring this up is because how it plays, which is with the Wiimote sideways. And if you've ever played the Wiimote sideways, it can be cumbersome when controlling movement in a 3D space with the D-pad. You'll eventually get used to it, but when developers had the option of the nunchuck or even the Wii Pro controller, I don't exactly understand why they would stick with the Wiimote on its side. I do believe there's an industry reason for this decision, but it's still very odd when there's an arguably more comfortable alternative. This also goes for using the missiles. The way you use the missiles is you have to point the Wii remote at the TV to aim, which breaks the flow of combat in the game. I have had many troubles with lining up the missiles or even just using them, especially in intense boss fights. Outside of the game being in 3D, this game introduces two new mechanics that I really like, such as the sidestep and the lethal strike. As I've mentioned in the reviews of Samus Returns and Metroid Dread, these moves are the predecessors to the melee counter, and I believe inspiration for the cutscenes that play during the takedown. Another thing I really like about this game is how agile Samus is. Wall jumping and platforming feel really good, and even the combat feels pretty good too. Which is surprising for how much people said that this game was bad. Which I do see where people say that the game could be bad, mainly because within the story that I forgot to mention, Adam asks you to not use all your weapons. For his protection of his crew and whatever survivors are here, the weapons that Samus has he deems are too lethal, which, yeah, makes sense, she's a bounty hunter, but it kinda sucks when you have to weaken yourself even though you have the items. Which I understand, it is a Metroid tradition to not be able to use all your items at first. But you could have used a Metroid Prime reason, like your suit was damaged or something. And when it all comes down to Adam's request, it kinda just sucks. I think the thing that really sucks about this is the game does put you at a few disadvantages because the game has some kind of thing of where I think it's trying to feel like Adam's assessing the situation. But maybe I think one of the better ways is if he gave you a warning of the area, allowed you to use your weapons because the area is dangerous, and I think that would have just been a better way to do it instead of you going through some areas and taking damage. And lastly, there isn't really any missiles or health drops within this game, because if you run out of missile or you are critically low on health, you can recharge it as long as you have the time to do so, which does cause for some tense situations, but you are low on health, so of course. This kind of can be a good and a bad in ways because you can't really rely on healing, and it works realistically in the kind of overworld, but in boss fights it feels super tense, and it can be a slight problem, but it really doesn't matter. I really haven't had to recharge in battles, and when I have, I've either been allowed to, which is cool, or I've just died, so it's nothing really big. With all that being said, this is a wildly interesting Metroid game, and I think that I enjoyed my time with it more than I honestly thought I would have. But let's move on from all this and move on to the presentation. When it gets right down to the presentation, this game feels very cinematic, like it was really going for a grand spectacle. I suspect that this was to keep up with other sci-fi games like Halo. Well, not really hitting the mark with the cutscenes and characters, but sticking the landing with the game's in-game cinematics and design. This game does one of my favorite things, which is bring back classic enemies and put them into 3D. Not to say that the game relies on nostalgia though, there are a lot of new enemies. The design for most of this game, like Samus's armor, is really well done, but I will say, outside of the poor characterization, that this game presents itself pretty well. The music in this game is very cinematic, but ambient. It's trying to build tension, but it really doesn't work because Samus is pretty powerful within this game. I feel all in all that the presentation on this game is pretty solid. I understand that the writing might not be the greatest, but whatever. It tried at least. With that being said, let's move on to accessibility. So Metroid Other M is pretty accessible, being that it only came out for the Wii, 1, and 2, it just seems to be a very cheap game, going for 14 to 24 bucks, which isn't bad at all. I feel like if you really want to give this game a try, go for it. It's not the most expensive game, and honestly, I don't honestly know how much it would have gone for, you know? I mean, I do believe that the game did sell pretty well. Not the greatest, but it did sell, so I don't know. These kind of games go either or. Bad games either are super cheap or super expensive, or at least perceived bad games are that way, so I honestly had no clue what I was expecting. Also, it's from the Metroid franchise, and I thought that it would be actually honestly worth more, but hey, whatever. If you're interested in the game, go give it a try, because it's not going to set you back too much. With that being said, let's move on to the goods and the bads. Okay, I'm gonna level with you. I actually enjoyed my time with this game more than I honestly thought I would. It does have a few bumpy spots, but the bumpy spots I feel are definitely not as bad as I thought it was. Going into this game, I honestly thought that this would be a gameplay, cinematic, and every other kind of mess, but in reality, I think that this is a very interesting and well done game. I am not a big fan of having to hold the Wii remote sideways. I just don't like it, but I got used to it pretty quick, and I just like how it worked out, because one of the cool things about this game is that it does have stuff like the sidestep and the lethal strikes, which I think work out very well. I like how you are able to fight the enemies. I like how your old power-ups are able to be used within this game. I realistically kind of vibe with parts of the story, and I am surprised that I did. I don't think that Metroid should probably go down this route again, but there's a lot of stuff that I really liked and I found intriguing, and I found myself being a little bit captivated with the deleter plot and the whole usage of the bottle ship. Once you get into it, it starts to really unfold in an interesting way, at least the narrative. That doesn't mean that it 100% works the full way, but I still liked a lot that happened here. I like the presentation, I like the older enemies. As I've said before, it doesn't feel like it relies on nostalgia, at least in gameplay. Story, yeah, a little bit, but I just really like how this game all came together, especially since this was a 3D Metroid, and maybe if it wasn't used only through the sideways Wii remote, it probably could have been better. I would absolutely love to see this game probably getting a remaster or a remake even on the next Switch console, or even the Switch. I have no clue what's happening right now, because I want to say that I don't keep up with that, but in reality, I just haven't heard any news that I can say is reliable, so that's why I keep saying in these episodes, the other Switch console. But I think that that'd be pretty cool for the Switch sequel, or even the Switch, to get a port of this game, because I feel like it being slightly fixed is possible. They did it with Skyward Sword, so I think that it'd be possible to do with this game, and I feel like Skyward Sword is a bigger ask, so I feel like you can find a way to change the point and click mechanic very easily. And when you fix that one, the game works out even better. I would love to see another 3D Metroid, and I'm hoping that the critical reception isn't what stops us from seeing another game like this. I really enjoyed the 3D spaced Metroid, and I would love to see it come back again. All in all, in truth, this game turned out to be a better experience than I thought, and that's another example of maybe check out a game for yourself before you listen to what other people have to say, because that's why I didn't like this game. I came into this game originally, when I first played it, negatively, and I feel like coming into it with more of an open mind definitely made this a better experience, but that doesn't mean that this game is perfect. With that being said, let's move on to the bads. I feel like this game really fumbles the bag within its story, and I feel like that's where most people are justified with it. And it's not that the story is bad, it's just there's a lot of things within the narrative that just feels off or weird. And the one that majorly comes to mind, Samus's encounter with Ridley. Because Samus freezes up in a weird place and has a traumatic experience with Ridley, which would work in a Metroid remake, or even a Super Metroid remake, but depending even in truth how you look at this game, right, in the timeline, because, and the reason why I say this is because there's kind of a spoiler for what I'm about to say. Samus has dealt with Ridley technically 3 times, if you want to count Samus Returns as canon. Right? The DS version. So her dealing with Ridley this many times and not having a traumatic response is odd. And I know that it feels like I'm harping on that, but there's a lot of moments within this game that feel that way, or just madly nonsensical things within the story, but it doesn't really ruin it 100%, at least for me. I feel like this game's story is definitely hit or miss. And another thing that I really don't like about this game is realistically some of the gameplay decisions. It doesn't once again break the game because I'm coming away from this liking it, but it really does suck that when you have options like the nunchuck and the Wii Pro controller on the market, it feels odd that they decided to go, nope, you only have the Wiimote sideways for this 3D game. Now, I don't know if having those other options would have broken it, but definitely a nunchuck would have been better, especially for aiming with the missiles, because you could have just pressed a button and bada bing bada boom, your hands are already there, for the most part, that is. And it's kind of crazy that they didn't decide to do that. Like I said in the gameplay, there's probably an industry reason for it, probably because they wanted it to be simple, because I feel like I've heard somewhere, and I don't fact check this, but I feel like I've heard somewhere that they wanted you to just be able to pick up and play this game without having to buy accessories or some crap like that. There is probably an industry reason. Either it is known to the public or not, and if it is, leave it in the comments below. But I feel like I kind of can see a reason for it, because in my mind the reason is they just want you to be able to play it off the bat. But I feel like most people owned a nunchuck, because a lot of Wii games definitely revolved around it. So it feels odd that they just decided to go, no, we're not doing that. And it might have messed with the programming of the game, you know, to have to map that out, but I don't know. I don't honestly know. With that being said, it's still an issue that I kind of wish they chose a different playstyle. And that's really it. I just wish that there was a better playstyle and maybe a more cohesive story, but even then, the more cohesive story probably wouldn't be as memorable to me, I guess. The fact that this is uncohesive doesn't bother me that much as it sounds. It's just, the weird choices they decided to take is what I took away from this game, and I kind of like them. Do I want to see them in another Metroid game? Absolutely not. But I feel like, I don't know, I feel kind of disappointed. Can I be honest with y'all? I feel very disappointed that coming away from this game that I like it, not because I like it, but because I could have liked this game sooner. And it really kind of upsets me that I didn't listen to myself on this one, because I probably would have came away liking this game. With that being said, though, let's move on to the final thoughts. So, is Metroid Other M really that bad? And the answer is no. Is it great? No. Is it the worst Metroid game ever? I don't know. I don't really know what you would consider as the worst Metroid game. To be honest, the worst thing about this game is the narrative and some of the writing within it, but even then it's not that bad. There was multiple times where I caught myself enjoying this game, and the way that it went, it does have some problems, absolutely. But I don't know, I really enjoyed it, and maybe you might too. With that being said, how do you feel about this game? Please leave a comment in the comment section below how you feel. maybe you also like it, and maybe you might want to give it a try. It's definitely accessible, so why not? With that being said though, what's your favorite Metroid game? I'm curious. I've probably asked this before, but you kind of forget. With that being said, I'll see you guys next time here on Nostalgia Goggles. Bye!